Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Schiller Hamilton Podcast. Today we have Charlie Corrigan joining us. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. Charlie's going to talk to us about something in claims that's pretty rare, but he thinks is really important. So go ahead and explain to us a little bit about what you're going to talk about.
It's not very, very common. It's also not particularly rare. But what I would like to talk about briefly is claim in South Carolina that is called loss of companionship. A lot of, and there's no reason why you would know this, just if you're not an attorney, it doesn't affect most people's lives, but when a spouse is injured in South Carolina, the non-injured spouse who hasn't experienced the physical injury, for example, can have a cause of action against the at-fault party or the wrongdoer for what's called loss of companionship. And that includes really just numerous things, but essentially the change in their relationship as a result of the injuries. For example, loss of intimacy due to the injured spouse being in physical pain and not being able to be intimate with their spouse, not being able to help around the house in ways that they used to, and the spouse has to pick up those duties and alter their own schedule. It could include an injured person who is terrified of driving due to just the
PTSD.
Yeah, just the fear of having an accident that could be fatal, that could change the course of their life. Basically, the same thing that's already happened to them, the fear of that happening again. So when that does alter the course of their daily lives, alters their perspective and their personality in certain regards, the other spouse has a cause of action for loss of companionship. So, and really, you have a valid cause of action in a lot of cases if you are noticing a change in your spouse's personality, for example, maybe outbursts of anger, frustration, closing in. Depression is one very common one because that can affect every single aspect of a household. It can affect the relationship between one another. It can affect the couple's social life. If the injured person is unable physically to take part in social activities due to pain, doesn't feel like doing anything due to depression, doesn't want to leave the house due to crippling anxiety, like you said, just the plethora of negative effects that are impossible to predict and that are different for every person that stem from PTSD or trauma-related psychological issues. So basically, that's the gist of this cause of action, and it's a really good thing that it is a recognized cause of action, both in common law and in South Carolina. It's statutory as well, because it really is the right of a spouse whose life has been impacted to hold the at-fault party accountable for that. It's a lot of times it doesn't come down just to medical bills. It doesn't come down to just physical impairment from the person that's injured. It comes down to how both spouses' lives have changed completely. Mm-hmm. If one spouse is having night terrors after an accident, or has to, toss and turn in the bed due to feeling pain in most positions that they try to sleep in, and that causes the other spouse to also have many sleepless nights. That's just one of many examples, and it's a pretty broad cause of action. So essentially, there's no specific definition for it, but the wording of the statute is loss of aid, services, society, etc. And basically all that comes down to how is your life and your relationship different, aka worse, than it was before this accident happened. So that's just an important thing for a spouse to know when they're experiencing the fallout from the injuries, mental and physical and emotional, that their loved ones are experiencing, specifically their spouse. The cause of action is unfortunately only available for spouses, married couples. So that is one caveat.
So where have you seen this kind of loss of companionship come up in cases that you've been involved with?
Well, psychological injuries and and obviously physical injuries, because it's really, the body and the mind are really interconnected in a lot of ways. For example, someone who has been injured and they're no longer able to go hiking, for example, canoeing, kayaking.
Traveling.
Right. That's a huge one.
With their significant other.
Yeah, with their significant other. That their spouse is also really no longer able to do those things. They don't want to do it by themselves. Mm-hmm. It's not enjoyable by themselves. And also, maybe they initially bonded over hiking and it was something they didn't enjoy to do with the family, to get away. Maybe they like doing it with friends. And it's no longer an option because
extenuating circumstances,
back pain, ankle surgery, etc., you name it. Which obviously leads to a feeling of isolation for both parties, potentially, or at least isolation from just the feeling that they had of interconnectivity and doing these fun activities where they bonded, maybe isolation from friends that they used to go do these activities with. Both of them have lost something that they love to do. All in one foul swoop. Another one is depression and anxiety and feelings of helplessness that both spouses can experience when one spouse, who maybe both spouses are working, maybe the breadwinner is the one who was injured, loss of income, that on top of all the economic difficulties, it causes the household and both parties. It also takes away from the injured person the feeling of your self-worth in a way. A lot of people identify as a person with what their employment is,
the financial situation.
Right.
Yeah.
But so
it's a great factor.
Yeah. So and obviously it's entirely natural and even common to become depressed as a result of that. It's something
Sadly
that you took pride in. It's how you provided for your family. You can no longer do that, so you feel lost, right? Mm-hmm. And
so you talked a lot about the impacts on the relationship when it comes to loss of companionship, but what are some of the impacts on the case? Like, is this something that can translate to damages?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that. How would this affect your case? So now, so we have a loss of companionship. When does this become a part of the process? Is this something that happens early on?
Well, a lot of times it comes in not immediately after the accident, but when the case is in litigation. So when I take the case over, and oftentimes well after that, because first of all, people aren't necessarily aware of this claim, this cause of action that they have. It's just not something that comes up. But more often, it is something that the client is aware of, possibly, but it has just taken a little bit of time to really experience that adverse impact to the relationship, to their daily lives, to how they interact with one another, to their feelings of companionship and happiness, etc. It takes a little bit of time from whenever the injury occurs to really realize a year later, it's like, wow, we
lost out on all this.
Yeah. It's because you're just,
it takes you that time to realize what you didn't get. Yeah.
You're so concerned with doctor's appointments, feeling better, trying to keep the bills paid, take the kids to school, that oftentimes it takes quite a bit of time to digest, wow, there's been a change in the injured spouse's personality that it hasn't really gotten better. The depression was there, the caving in, shutting other people out. It's just what people do after traumatic injuries. It's just naturally how humans react. And when that doesn't go away and it's lingering, and there's just that difference in the personality and just that difference in the relationship that is becoming clearly permanent, God forbid, or something that can be fixed with, mental health treatment, psychiatry, etc. But it just takes time for that to take shape, if that makes sense. So that's it. It's not always immediately apparent. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's clear that, for example, with immediately apparent permanent disability, it's predictable that, for example, maybe the injured spouse won't be able to be intimate.
Obviously a big problem.
Yes, and also won't be able to help around the house, won't be able to take part in activities that
objects of attraction that
both
might have agreed upon. Like you do this and I do that. It's usually a balance.
but it just and
could throw that balance off.
But outside of those scenarios, sometimes it takes some time to realize that there are lasting effects to the relationship.
So a lot of what you're talking about almost kind of sounds like loss of enjoyment of life. So where do you draw the line between loss of companionship and loss of enjoyment of life?
Well, so they're pretty similar, but loss of companionship is that's a cause of action for the spouse of the injured individual. So it's pretty similar as far as.
So they don't need to be a plaintiff in this case.
No, they would.
They would be. Okay.
Yes,
You would add them on.
Yeah.
Even if they weren't involved in the accident per se.
Yeah, no. I mean,
that's an important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of, if they wouldn't. If let's just take the example to a spouse, a couple in a car, they both get injured. They're both plaintiffs. There could also be a loss of consortium claim, but I'm talking about the scenario where just one spouse injured in the car.
Okay.
Other spouse was at home, was at work. Doesn't matter where they were. They still have a cause of action if the factors that we've been talking about are present. They have a right to compensation because it's injured them as well, not physically per se, but emotionally it's affected their lives. So it is pretty similar to loss of enjoyment, but
what about
yes,
kids?
they're a named party.
What about the kids? So it's like missing out on kids' games is like, would that be companionship or is it only for the marriage status?
Yeah, no.
So it has to be husband and wife or
there's
partner.
There's no loss of companionship for children. That's
even if it's in a marriage.
Some states have that. It's loss of filial companionship, I believe.
It's just not exactly the same.
But it's
not what's
in South Carolina. We don't have that.
Okay.
So a child would not have a cause of action for that. It's loss of companionship between spouse.
Is there like a limit for how long you have to have been together?
No.
So you could. Is there any advice that you have for somebody whose spouse has been in an accident, the kind of steps they could take where you would push them towards looking at any statute or? Yeah,
well, leave that up to whatever attorney you feel comfortable with helping out with your case. But it's something to know about for individuals who have a spouse that is making a claim against an insurance company, corporation, individual, etc. It's something to know about in that scenario, also it's something to know about even if there is not a claim made yet, just something to be aware of. But really, really it pertains to individuals who have already, decided to make a claim, which if, worse comes to worse and settlement isn't reached, then it'll need to go to litigation, become an actual lawsuit. But yeah, I mean, it's important for those people to know. But yeah.
Well, thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate this information. I think it's going to help a lot of people, especially when they're stuck in a situation that they don't understand, exactly fully what's happened and what they can get out of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just...
why do you think that there's such a... it's not as well known because it's just so helpful?
Well, just because it's... I don't know. It's... I understand that the reason why people wouldn't necessarily be aware of it. It doesn't really come up. It's more, it's discussed in law firms and in law school, but it just so most people, the vast majority of people have never heard of that cause of action. But it also completely makes sense, and it's totally just and fair that is a cause of action, because that is a tangible injury to the non-injured spouse. I mean, you're arguably the most important thing in a family's lives, in the household life of a household, is the relationship between spouses. I mean, that and the relationship between the spouses and the children. I mean, everyone would agree that's one of the most important things in life, period. Mm-hmm. So when that becomes, I mean, for lack of better words, kind of a nightmare, just having to see your spouse suffer, your personal life suffer, have to change your work schedule, social life changes, social life ends on a lot of cases, watching your spouse go through mental health issues, experiencing them yourself, it's terrible. So it makes sense that whoever caused that injury to your spouse that caused all these terrible ancillary effects, they should be responsible to compensate you for those injuries. So it makes sense, and it's a good thing that it's cause of action.
When someone has this loss of companionship, what are their options? What can they do?
Well, their options are to, this sounds kind of self-serving, but to call an attorney. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, free consultations. We do it. Other firms do it. A lot of firms do it. Just calling to ask. I mean, we pick up the phone and talk to many of people who, we don't make them sign anything, nothing like that. It's just, we want to help. We want to let people know what's going on. So just contact an attorney if your spouse is not in an active claim. Contact an attorney to ask questions and think, just to get some ideas about whether your experience is compensable. And also just if you have an active claim, it's something to think about, and whoever is representing you, mention it to them. And it's not always available as a cause of action. It is limited to situations where, I mean, the relationship has to be adversely impacted, truly. So it's, it's not difficult to establish per se, but there are certain factors that do need to be there. But if anyone hearing this is wondering whether they have a loss of companionship claim, you probably do. If you have a gut feeling that you do, you probably do. But I mean, short answer is.
Is there any negative reason of just trying? Is there anything?
No.
No, of course.
No. I mean, if there's no claim there, then whatever attorney anyone chooses to contact will just say, probably not a claim there, and that's it. if there is a claim there, then you become a party to the lawsuit. And if it's before the lawsuit, then it's just something that an attorney needs to inform whoever they're trying to get to offer a reasonable settlement. It's something to make them aware of, the other side. Hey, listen, it's not as simple as this. There's also another person, another household that's just been changed. So.
Also, well, I think I understand the loss of companionship a lot better, and thank you for clarifying.
Thanks,
for
man.
not only me, but the audience as well. I hope this was helpful, beneficial, and informational to y'all. If you have anything that you want to comment on, reach out to us, please, in the comment section below. Share it with your friends, and thank you so much. We can't wait to send you the next one. Resources about the topic will be in the description below.
I have a comment for you.
Charlie's going to leave us out.
I really like your shirt, man. Seriously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mine's way better, though. Let's be honest.
I'm
just kidding, man.
He's just he's just a Citadel boy. He gets excited.
All right, cut that out. Cut that out. Seriously. I'm just kidding.
I'm going to keep it in.